This is HBR News number 479. Ukraine ramps up the temperature, launches U.S. rockets into Russia, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to HBR News. I'm your host, Brian. I'm joined by Hannah and Dr. Rannemer. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of sorts today. So I had originally planned some different stories, but I had to get rid of at least one of them because of recent events. So we're going to be talking about those as well as some of the original intended stories. On this week's HBR News show, we're going to be discussing this recent development with the Ukraine and Russia conflict. A woman deletes her father for wild reasons that you have to stick around to get the full picture of. BlueSky is now in operation, and people have fled the oppressive white male cisgendered patriarchal space that is X to go there for refuge. They are basically refugees at the border of BlueSky and more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. Or at least a time. I don't know about good. And be sure to stick around afterwards for the patron-only show. So on the patron-only show, oh crap, I don't have it up on here, but I got this article from our friends over at The Guardian, who are always good for patron show content, entitled How to Survive the Broligarchy, 20 Lessons for the Post-Truth World. Don't you know it? And we're going to be looking at that in the patron show, the Broligarchy, guys. Here, I'll show it up.
It's okay, ladies, because you've been telling us for the last 100 years that truth isn't real anyway. So there you go.
Yeah, we're past that. We are post that, in fact.
In the meantime, the Guardian is busy selling this absolutely Stalinist war on farmers. I know people aren't talking about this outside the UK, but it's another thing straight out the Bolshevik playbook. We'll talk about it in the after show.
I don't have it picked as a story, but I knew that you were going to want to talk about it, so I am going to allow you space.
I got one thing to say about that.
About the farmers.
Never knock the farmer with food in your mouth.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to join us for this, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and starting up a membership. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to enjoy the post-show content, and including this beautiful article from the lovely Carol Cadwalder, where she will be telling us all about the Broligarchy, which I'm kind of into right now. So maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need to be brotesque and be a Broligarchy. But anyway, hopefully we will see you guys there. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet for having really not cool views, then go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com to find where all of our content lives. Now, with all that out of the way, let us get into the story. So first, an update on the Daniel Penny trial. In the trial of Daniel Penny, accused of manslaughter for restraining Jordan Neely on a New York subway, witness Eric Gonzalez admitted to lying about his involvement due to fear of repercussions, which has significantly impacted his credibility. Despite this, Gonzalez's actions in assisting Penny were captured on video, showing his attempts to help manage Neely's erratic behavior. This testimony underscores the theme that helping others can sometimes lead to unforeseen consequences, as both Penny and Gonzalez face public scrutiny and legal challenges for their actions in trying to control a potentially very dangerous situation. So just a little follow-up. One guy was essentially caught lying on trial about his involvement. And this is in favor of Penny. So because the idea was that Penny was, this evil white dude that killed a harmless Michael Jackson impersonator on the train. And we all know that's not what this is about. So thought I would just throw it out there. Just a little follow-up. What do you guys have any thoughts on this? Go ahead.
He's a lover, not a fighter.
I'm not Jack the Ripper.
You can't do the Michael Jackson voice. I won't be able to talk. No, this destroys the case, in my opinion. If I was on the jury and one of their important witnesses describing everything that happened and who is speaking to the intent of the accused actually lied and can't be trusted, then all of his testimony, in my opinion, goes out the window. Like, unless you have a tainted jury, which is possible. I mean, we had one in the George Floyd case. And unless you have, bias in the court, which is very probable because it is New York, and that's rather a left-wing area, an anti-male area, and so on. They're probably going to have a rough time finding him guilty. But all those other factors might mean that it's going to happen anyway. And then the rest of us should cry foul, and there should be an appeal.
I think they're looking for
his due process rights are being trampled by allowing a witness that has admitted to lying to then make proclamations as to what actually happened.
Yeah, they're looking for another George Floyd moment, especially now. I think this is. I mean, it's obviously purely political. This whole case.
Well, the fact that the guy died from something, they know that the guy died from something other than the situation.
Well, it wasn't a chokehold. It was a restraining hold.
Right?
Go ahead.
But he was alive, and the cops refused to do CPR on him. So he didn't die from any kind of restraint or chokehold or his oxygen being cut off or anything. He died from being neglected. He died. The state killed him. He died because the cops refused. And obviously, if they refused, it's probably because they were not given the proper tools for the job, because there are tools you can keep on your person. And it's not like it takes up a lot of space either. The mask I carry is it's in a little container on my keychain that is a third the size of my check card. It's actually it's shorter, in fact, than some of my keys. So they should all have those. There's no reason for them to not have those. And if they didn't, and they chose not to do anything for him, because in their minds he was a dirty drug addict, then that's their prejudice. The guy that was protecting the people on the train isn't the guilty guy. The guys that come rushing in with guns to arrest somebody, they're the guilty guys.
Well, the other thing too to bear in mind, though, is that the police had been significantly defunded by the state of New York. So their response time on the subway was like significantly longer than it normally would have been. So there's a number.
Was still alive when they got there,
right? And I think there was so much negative press around cops. I'm not sure that it was like that they would know exactly how they should respond, because if he died in their custody, then
there's no excuse.
I'm not making an excuse. I'm explaining I'm just explaining the various factors. Like, we've been shitting on cops for years.
I'll be honest, like, those factors might have existed. They might have had all that confusion and everything. But honestly, that's, the same people who are mad about this guy's death, they're at fault for that. And as far as policy is concerned, they should have addressed that. If they're upset about the cops, and they're accusing the cops of killing black men, because that's what Black Lives Matter was about, then the idea that a group of cops showing up to find a black man suffocating on the ground should be afraid to do CPR, like that should not be part of their policy. That's what I'm saying. If they're really concerned about cops killing black people,
yeah, but they're not.
Then they should give them the tools to do the first aid that they know how to do when they arrive on the scene. They might not be EMTs, but they do have training. And those tools are not so expensive that somebody who can be outfitted with Kevlar and a gun and a taser, couldn't carry one of those and have it ready for use at any point in time. Oh, and a camera, right? They're outfitted with a camera too. So they have all those other items that are pricey. They should be able to have that mask.
Mhm.
There's no excuse for this to have happened. So to blame it on Penny, it's kind of like the doctor blaming the nurses for the death of a combative patient that he refused to treat after they get him settled down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't write anything down for this one because I think I said everything I had to say last week. But it's worth reiterating that men like Daniel Penny do this because they are strong-armed, morally, emotionally strong-armed into doing it by all these assumptions that men are supposed to do these things. Oh, happy International Men's Day, by the way.
Oh yeah,
We
I
got to bring it up.
forgot. Yeah, sorry.
It finally falls on a Tuesday, so yeah, I say happy, but it's never a happy occasion because there's almost never any happy news to relay to anyone. But this is another example of. I mean, very often when you see videos, particularly viral videos, that are caught in inner cities of some immigrant or other sort of attacking someone, the comments very often come along the lines of, look, there's a man 15 feet away and he's not doing anything about it. This is what's wrong with society. Men aren't doing anything about all these things. Here's Daniel Penny. He did a thing and he's currently facing the absolute ruination of his life. And, no one says the women aren't doing anything, even when there's several women perfectly with it. Two women can do what one man can do quite easily. A man is stronger than a woman, but two women are stronger than a man. And all it takes is for two women to come in and put in a fucking chokehold or whatever. But they don't, largely because they're not emotionally blackmailed into doing it. Hold on. By these cunts who just assume that it's men's job to do something about it, even when men will get not just persecuted but prosecuted, whether they do something or they don't do something. So yeah, I reiterate my point, gentlemen. As much as it may seem like it's your duty as a good citizen to do something about it, it's not your duty as a man to do something about it, because you won't be thanked as a man. If a woman saves random strangers from some irrational nutter, they will be heralded for the rest of their lives as heroines. But if you do anything, you'll be damned if you do and damned if you don't. So, yeah, sorry if this sounds antisocial of me, but just don't do anything. Wait until the fucking law changes so that you don't risk not only getting killed by whatever antisocial immigrant is scaring the general public, but so that you don't end up going to prison for the rest of your life and probably shanked to death in jail for your efforts. Save yourselves, gentlemen. Like, have some self-preservation. This is what no one is telling you, not from the left side and not from the right side. They're both telling you, no, sacrifice yourself for random women who fucking hate you in order to bring down some random fucking vagrant who also fucking hates you. No, just live your own life, for God's sake. Run away if you have to. People will call you a coward, but at least you're a coward who's alive and not in prison for his whole life. That's the if you're really going to weigh your options, that seems to be the right way to go. Your life is valuable. Your life is important. Which these shitsmiths who are telling you to sacrifice it will never acknowledge. But I'm here telling you, fucking save your own life. Just don't go into these public places if you can help it, because you're walking into an elephant trap. Just go out into the country and live a life where you don't get bothered by these fucking urban chaos agents. And I don't just mean the criminals. I mean the women who will blame you for trying to save them. You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm doing. Live your life.
All right. I got a super chow from Meredith, but I just wanted to say that this whole case, these like defund the police policies, these leftist policies that come out of the federal, state, and local governments of New York and other sort of urban monoculture cities create the conditions for these things to happen. So you wait for an incident to occur, you create a bunch of propaganda and stink about it. You agitate the populace, you scare the shit out of people, you cause governments to defund the police, to demonize the police and anyone else, and citizen, let's say Samaritans like Daniel Penny from stepping forward. You create a chilling effect. No one does anything. You also are really light on the criminals. So Jordan Neely had been in and out of jail and various mental institutions multiple times, and the defund the police and these soft on crime prosecutors and activists ensured that he was not where he should have been, which is probably in a cell or somewhere away from other people. So he was out there acting up a fool, threatening people, and that creates the conditions. So what I'm saying is that these things don't just happen in isolation. There's a number of factors that contribute to this, and it puts us in the position where we're at now. Like, look at what's going on in, say, Minnesota or Chicago. They get these soft on crime policies, which put more criminals on the streets. They don't support the police. They don't support law enforcement. They don't support citizens who want to defend themselves and defend their neighbors. And if they do, and something happens to these criminals who shouldn't be on the street anyway, then the people who acted up, who stepped forward, are the ones that are blamed. And that's usually, like, 9 times out of 10, that's men. And so I'm saying, in the interest of what is right, that what is going to be good for everyone as a whole, but in particular what's good for men, Jordan Neely should not have been in that train to begin with, because he should have been in jail, because he's been in and out of jail constantly. But because the DAs are just like, oh no, we gotta be, we gotta ask him what's wrong. We gotta find out. We gotta approach these people. He just wanted food. He's just an innocent little Aladdin that was just trying to get bread for his family. When we know that's not the case, because they lie to us on purpose. They create the conditions for these tragedies to happen, and then they prosecute the wrong people for it. And everyone else is sort of like made to play along, because they don't actually, the people at the top who don't have to deal with this shit, they create the conditions for this to be. So that was the one thing I wanted to add to that. And Meredith G gives us $5 and says, HBR News number 479. In the Penny case, the medical examiner determined the victim died from a chokehold by looking at video, not by examining the body. And I believe that may have come out in court. Yeah, again, he wasn't choking him, he was restraining him. But that's how we're going to treat it, because the reason why, this is what I'm saying, this case is political. If they can prove, or not even prove, if they can essentially safely make the claim that Daniel Penny killed Jordan Neely, they can make it a race crime, they can make it a hate crime, and they can riot all summer, all winter, whatever. And that's the purpose of this. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's about what they can do. That's what they're trying to do, guys. I've been saying this ever since the George Floyd thing. When 2024 came around, and I was like, it's an election year, they're gonna try to make something out of nothing, so they can throw fits, they can burn everything down, and it would be appropriately what they want to do. And I think that's what this is. Every incident, like, there have been some incidents that end up getting, on tape, going viral. Of course, they get made viral by the establishment, by the cathedral. Oh my God, look at this. There's no investigation. They get people charged up emotionally, and they get them to burn down their cities, and they get other people to go along with it because they feel guilty about it. And I'm saying, don't, because this is intentional.
Be suspicious anytime anything goes viral. Let me give you a real short story here. Once upon a time, I made a video criticizing the issues with the concept of enthusiastic consent, and how that concept is not treated as though it goes both ways. When feminists talk about it, they talk about it like something men have to obtain and women can give and still say they didn't. So I made a video about it. And on Reddit, it made the front page. And when it made the front page, it got something like 360,000 views. Reddit literally changed the rules on what videos can go into the subreddit that it was posted into in order to prevent any more of my videos from making their front page. So that tells you, if they had to change the rules to keep a video that was political from making the front page without the people on Reddit, the controllers of Reddit, right, the admins' permission, that tells you that they control what goes viral. They very carefully curate and cultivate what goes viral. Nothing ever actually goes viral. You are directed to look at it. And then they call it viral.
All right. So we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Okay, so this one's a bit darker, but I thought it was necessary. So a well-to-do woman living in Seattle viciously murdered her own father, seemingly due to Donald Trump's impending re-election. Corey Burke, age 33, worked as a training program manager at Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's spacecraft business, competitor to SpaceX. Burke was considered wealthy and well off, living in an $800,000 home in a high-end neighborhood in Seattle, Washington, with their 67-year-old father, who she cared for. Burke was also married to a male-to-female transgender writer, Samantha Lee Allen. On election night, an argument broke out between her and her father. Court records reveal the chain of events, stating, quote, Corey stated when her father started arguing with her about the lights being shut off that she, quote, just freaked out, end quote. The defendant told detectives that she knew that she could not convince him to keep the lights off, so she went upstairs, retrieved an ice axe, and tripped her father, strangled him with the axe and her hands, and then bit him and hit him several times in the head and side with the blunt and sharp ends of the ice axe, end quote. After gruesomely murdering her own father, Burke began to smash out all the windows in her house, which is when her neighbors notified police. Law enforcement arrived to find Burke covered in her father's blood, smiling and clapping. When asked why she was so elated, she responded, quote, because I'm so happy, end quote. When asked why she was covered in blood and why her windows were all smashed out, at first Burke feigned ignorance, but eventually whispered to one of the police officers, I killed him. From that point on, Burke was not shy about sharing her motives with responding officers. She stated that she knew that Trump was poised to beat Harris in that day's election and that her actions were meant to, quote, help people change their attachment to their parents and that it had to happen today, end quote. She also viewed her actions as, quote, an act of liberation, end quote.
You know, if let's reverse everything here. If Harris was poised to beat Trump and a man did this to his mother and said those things to the police, this would be translated into an event that defines all men. It would be something that all men are responsible for, and he did it because masculinity and toxic masculinity in particular, and of course, every man is a threat. And
every Trump supporter.
Every Trump supporter, but they mean men when they say Trump supporters, because I've spent the last 8 years noting little bits here and there about videos where somebody in a MAGA hat in a public place gets, a tirade thrown at them, or gets food thrown at them, or gets kicked out of a restaurant or off of a plane because their clothing is offensive because it has Trump on it. And I have yet to see one where the individual was female and wasn't deliberately getting in people's faces. There was one that was of a woman, but you could see her being a cunt and being a disturbance in the area. Men don't have to do that to get kicked out. All they have to do is be men. And if they happen to have an opinion that other people disagree with, well, being a man makes them a threat. And being a man makes them dangerous. It's not the opinion. It's their masculinity. That's always the attitude people have. People will look at me, even though I'm big in comparison to a lot of other women. And I mean, there's a lot of women that are bigger than me too, right? But people will look at me and they will see me as harmless. I have made other women bleed on purpose. I have made men bleed on purpose and in self-defense. And I'm not dangerous because I've got tits, right? That's the thing that people think. That's the way that they look. They'll see me as someone in need of rescuing because I'm female. Unless I get attacked by a pretty girl, then all bets are off. But a guy, he didn't have to be doing anything. He doesn't have to be doing jack or shit. And they would blame the Trump campaign. They would blame the men's rights movement. They would probably bring up incels and MGTOW and find a way to shove Andrew Tate in there like some sort of a fleshy dildo. But the reality is, this was a mentally ill person who, if she hadn't been triggered by something like this, she would have been triggered by something else because she's clearly fucked up. This is somebody who really needed help. And, you know, like the last story, she didn't get it. She didn't get the help she needed. If she got some of it, it wasn't enough. And when you add something like the violent rhetoric that has been put out there for the last 8 years about Trump and Trump supporters, both the portrayal of us as a violent threat and the portrayal of us as acceptable targets for violence, you pretty much direct people with that type of mental health condition at us, especially the men. Because at the other end of it, in the actual story, the man in the story was the one who got killed. He was the one who got targeted with violence. And again, being a Trump supporter isn't the main reason that he gets treated as an acceptable target for violence. It's because he's a man.
We covered a story last week about a man who killed his family because of his Trump derangement syndrome, and the mass media didn't jump on that story. Mental illness be damned, toxic masculinity be damned. The top of the list of propaganda points is which party the mass media wants to win. And so the evidence mounts. An increasingly non-zero amount of Trump supporters have been killed just for supporting Trump or just for opposing the Democrat agenda. As far as we know, to this date, 0 Democrat supporters have been killed just for opposing Trump or his agenda, up to and including the so-called insurrection of January the 6th, in which only Trump supporters were killed. As far as I can ascertain, the last known Democrat victim of political assassination was John F. Kennedy. And not just because he was a Democrat, but because he opposed that deep state thing that totally isn't a thing, but if it is, it's a good thing. Has anyone else experienced this phenomenon of people coming to their channel to express salty disbelief that we could ever support Trump? I had a couple of them on my last video. Bro, I like your content. You seem quite intelligent and talented, but how can you possibly be in favor of Trump? Mate, what content have you even watched? Yeah. You know, this is a political channel, Mike, right?
Believe you me, Mike, I know. I know.
For 10 years, I've been yelling about this shit like a broken fucking record. Are you really?
Well, the mistake is thinking that those are real commenters and not paid trolls or bots.
Yeah, like that. But
because the comments are showing up on things that I posted 8 years ago, and they all have the same kind of wording. And then they disappear a couple days later, which indicates that YouTube is getting rid of those comments because they are bots.
But case in point, bots don't kill people. What we're seeing here is that there really are real, not yet. But there really are real people who really are. I mean, this is the phenomenon of Poe's law, that you can never really tell if someone's a bot or just someone who's been brainwashed by the party. And so you have to assume that some of these people really are real people who just sound like bots because they are just as programmed as bots, and they're coming here saying, how can you possibly not believe what I believe? Are you really that baffled by the idea?
We could start calling them Gimbots.
Yes, but are you really that baffled by the idea that someone like me, who constantly goes on about Marxist, feminist, communism, would at the very least consider Trump to be the lesser of two evils? I would go further than that. For as long as anyone's been alive, you've only had the option of two evils, two equally warmongering, bureaucratic, big government tentacles of the same evil machine. That only changed when Trump came along. Now you've finally got someone who's at least professing any real interest in reducing government overreach and preventing wars, and you're calling him a fascist. He hasn't tried to expand the state. He's tried to drain the swamp. He hasn't tried to assassinate his political rivals. They have tried to assassinate him. His supporters haven't killed anyone, but they have been killed. Everyone claims they want to reduce government bureaucracy and reduce the military industrial complex and reduce the ravages of the pharmaceutical tyranny. But when you finally get an administration that promises to actually reduce these things, they're the fascists. Just what the fuck has to happen before you admit you were wrong, before you realize that you've been captured all along by a form of fascism under the guise of liberalism? The answer is nothing. Nothing will ever convince these people that they got, because the truth is too devastating to admit. There's this debate happening right now over whether these people are going to put the woke away. They're not. They can't. Not the evil manipulators at the top of the pyramid, and not the manipulated sheep at the bottom of it. They have no concept of oikophobia. They call it progress. And so everything they do, they consider to be progress. They have no reverse gear, because that would be regress. And even if they did have a reverse gear, they're long since past the point where they've broken the gearbox. They've long since passed the event horizon of the sunken cost fallacy. They can't put the woke away. All we can do is put them away, and I don't mean that in a violent sense. I mean just ignore them as best you can and watch them watch them fall helplessly into the black hole. All we'll see is an image frozen in time and slowly dimming to nothing, as one typically does when something falls into a black hole, at least astrophysically, theoretically. And as they fall, we can only hope they don't become violent like the cornered animals they are and continue killing their friends and even their family. It's immensely sad when families get broken up and estranged over these things. And I'm not suggesting that you should defoo anyone, especially not your family. But at some point, your priority needs to be to defend yourself. Be ready to defend yourself. You can hope that these people will get better, that one day they'll snap out of it. I mean, they might. Some of them are just sheep who will forget everything they've said in the past and end up just going along with whatever consensus ends up happening. But some of them won't. Some of them are just evil. In either case, don't let your guard down. Don't assume that they love you unconditionally like you love them unconditionally. It's very possible that they are inescapably captured, and the only thing they can ever love is the party. Consider yourself lucky that you don't live in Britain, where to this day there is only the choice between two evils, between a multitude of evils. There's no Trump here, not even Farage, not even the Reform Party. There is only one party here, and it's INGSOC. Those of us who haven't spent a lifetime being brainwashed by the idiot box we have no option but to keep our heads down and avoid discussing politics, especially with our families, because there really is nothing we can do. There's nothing we can say. It's not just the boomers who have been brainwashed. It's 4 generations of people who trust the party more than they can ever trust their families. We can't say anything to get through to them. So we're just trying to get along as best we can. And it's getting increasingly difficult. That's why I'm leaving this island as soon as I can. Bound for the land of the free. Wish me luck, folks.
Glad to have you. I wanted to say something, well, just a little bit of a different tack on this, because I think you guys covered most of this pretty well. First of all, it's obviously extremely dark that a daughter would kill her father and then essentially call it an act of liberation. But I couldn't help but, okay, first of all, we already know about her marriage to a trans woman, and I guess she thought her father voted for the orange man, which we don't even know for sure that he did. We don't know that. We do know that she was taking care of him, like she was his caretaker. He was elderly, he needed assistance, and she was doing that. And I know that can be, hard on people to like care for the elderly and the infirmed, but that doesn't excuse this. I'm just saying there's probably compounding factors. But what struck me, honestly, was I've been reading about, this is going to be really like out of left field, but I've been reading about the Manson family. And he sounds like one of the members of the cult. When she says, I have to help people change their attachment to their parents. It had to happen today. I'm so happy. She was found covered in blood and clapping and smiling. And she said she viewed it as an act of liberation. I don't know if you guys have looked at the people who were in like Charlie Manson's cult, but it was like mostly women, but there were some men too. And they were, let's just say they had similar ideas about waking people up, about trying to essentially start a revolution. I don't know if you know, but Charles Manson had many times said when, in interviews that what he was trying to do was start a race war by having, these people killed for him, essentially, which they were more than willing to do. So here's a quote from Patricia Krenwinkel, who said, I wake up every day knowing that I'm a destroyer of the most precious thing, which is life. And I do that because that's what I deserve, is to wake up every morning and know that. There is another one where they say, this is another person named Leslie Van Houten or Houten. She says, I'd like to see us improving on what we had last year. I started feeling like I would rather bomb playing my own songs and be successful playing someone else's music. She's referring to like the art of murder, I guess. And there's one from Susan Atkins where she says, we wanted to do a crime that the world would have to stand up and take notice. And it's creepy that I see these parallels. And I wonder, like, what is it that drives somebody like this? And again, I know that we could just say she was insane, and that would be maybe a bit of a cop out for her. I think it's just evil, and I think that you have to consider, and this is kind of like the darkest thing, when these murders happened in 1969 with the Manson family and Sharon Tate and all those other people, it shook the whole country was changed. This happens and it's barely a blip on the radar. Like some people are talking about it, but it does not have nearly the impact. And so I feel like we've kind of normalized something this heinous, and that they feel like empowered to say, I had to kill my father so that I could be free because he voted the wrong way. I don't know what else. You know what? Just take of that what you will. Maybe you think I'm crazy to make these connections, but it's just something that was on my mind. And I thought of that. I thought, yeah, there's something about that.
No, you've got a hold of it. There are certain types of mental health conditions where the people involved wouldn't necessarily become violent on their own. But when you give them, when you inflict on them, because it's not really giving, not exactly like it's a gift, right? But when you inflict on them a poisonous type of thought, a cult-like mentality, which is what's existent in politics in general, and you take that cult-like mentality and you take it into the realm of advocating violence against your fellow human being, and you make it seem like an emergency, and you hit them with it over and over again at a rapid pace, so that they don't get a chance to step back and think about it, and they don't get a chance to suspect that maybe they're being used, or that they need help making these decisions, and should talk to somebody outside the cult and so on. Then yes, you get people who are programmed to commit violence against other people, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Well, probably the last 15 years or so, maybe 20 years of news cycle has been like that, where the whole country has been hit rapid fire with these narratives, and they've become increasingly violent. They've become increasingly panic mongered, and they become increasingly polarizing. And while the country has always been polarized on certain things, and anybody that wants to disagree with that can go talk to the lady that threw pig shit in my face when I was 14 years old. We're talking like what, 1986, and so, some things people have been like that. We were like that about nuclear weapons and nuclear war back in the 80s too. It was life and death for some people, and for other people it was just never going to happen, so we could make light of it. And you had those two groups at odds with each other and at each other's throats, and you had that throughout politics then. But it wasn't something that the establishment media was as frenetic about as it is now. Now you have them constantly trying to shut anybody down that disagrees with them. You have them constantly trying to silence people who aren't panic mongering on both sides. If anybody's calling for peace, if anybody's calling for just, let's step back a minute and get rid of the violence and talk about these things and let the majority decide and everything, they're a threat to democracy. And that's that. So we will probably see more news stories like this until that power is taken away. And that means that the establishment can no longer be in control of the media, whether it's entertainment media, news media, or social media. Can't be done. They can't have it.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. This one is probably going to be the most discussed, even though I have a pretty short write-up for it. So anyway, let's talk about World War III. So World War III is back on the bingo card. Moscow has reported that Ukraine launched 6 U.S.-made long-range ATA-CMS missiles into Russia's Bryansk region, marking Kiev's first use of such weapons inside Russian territory since the conflict began. This attack occurred shortly after President Joe Biden allowed Ukraine to use those missiles against targets in Russia. Russia's defense ministry stated that they intercepted 5 of these missiles, with the 6th causing minor damage after being damaged. The incident coincides with a Russian revision of its nuclear doctrine, lowering the threshold for nuclear weapon use, which now includes considering conventional attacks by non-nuclear states supported by nuclear powers as a basis for nuclear retaliation. How many times am I going to say nuclear? Probably a few more times. This escalation
Thank you for not saying nuclear. Well done.
Nuclear. This escalation comes amidst ongoing military actions, with Ukraine also facing recent attacks from Russia, highlighting the intensified nature of the conflict.
I really have to. I apologize. I'm going to go around the houses on my way to this conclusion. I have to. I've noticed that people's schadenfreude regarding Kamala Harris has manifested in the form of sympathy for Joe Biden. He was, after all, subjected to an attempted coup of the seat of the presidency. So for the first time in his illustrious career, he was victimized by the skullduggerous machinations of the Democrat machine rather than lifted up and lionized by it. But that coup has, of course, failed with whatever the opposite of flying colors is. It's swimming darkness or whatever. So it seems like a victory for the aforementioned lesser of two evils. The sentiment in the air is, all is forgiven, Joe. At least you're not as fake and manufactured as the cackling witch who tried to usurp your throne. Well, maybe not. But please let us not forget, Joe Biden is still an absolute disgrace. He is still an evil, self-serving, power-hungry, money-laundering sociopath who will sell you all down the road at a moment's notice for any reason. When he met with Trump at the White House recently, people commented on how happy he looked. He was grinning like a Cheshire cat. He had more life in his eyes than he's ever had before, which is an unusual thing to do when the man you've called an irredeemable fascist is succeeding you. And people have looked at this and attributed it to him getting revenge on Kamala Harris and the regime that tried to install her. They've even speculated that Biden somehow orchestrated this by playing 4D chess, by endorsing Harris as his successor, rather than allowing for the event of a primary vote that would have inevitably been rigged in Harris's favor anyway. It's bizarre, it's bizarre that people can even entertain the idea that Biden is capable of this kind of strategic cognition, even in the latest stages of his ongoing dementia. I must say I have my doubts. I think Joe Biden only goes along with what he's told to do, specifically by his puppet master, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama. I think he knows there's a metric ton of dirt on him that can and will be publicized at a moment's notice, including his son's shady dealings with foreign hostiles on his behalf, and even including a bunch of stuff we don't even already know about. That's why Obama chose him as VP, and it's why Obama installed him as the Democratic nominee, because he has always had him in the palm of his greasy hand. And so the reason Biden seemed so happy when he met with Trump is not because he's happy to hand over the presidency. It's because he knows it's not going to happen. He knows what's going to happen. He may not have the cognitive wherewithal to change anything, or even the independent power to change anything, but he has just enough mental retention to be aware of what Obama has told him is going to happen. They're going to start World War III. Doesn't anyone else think it's weird that the Democrats have simply given up, that they've so meekly conceded this election to Trump, given the gargantuan levels of shady bullshit they went through to secure the presidency in 2020? Does anyone else get the eerie sense that, dare I say, it's a trap? No? I mean, they did try to kill him, didn't they? And even if they've given up trying to kill him, do you really think they don't have any more tricks up their sleeve? There are a few things they can do to prevent any transfer of power, including the creation of an emergency situation. Last time they created one for the sake of stealing an election through mail-in voting. This time they don't even need to. They can create an emergency situation that can completely invalidate the results of an election. We're at war with a global thermonuclear superpower now, so we need to stay in power for as long as it takes. This war has already gone on far longer than it ever needed to take. Once it goes from proxy war to direct hot war, that's it. Once we've burned through all the Ukrainian men, we can start burning through all the American men and whatever European men we can draft. Wars can last up to and including 100 years, even when the population was a fraction of what it is today. This administration can make a war last in perpetuity if it wants to. And pardon my cynicism, but I think it does indeed want to. Does anyone seriously doubt it? Do you think a regime that has shown nothing but resentment and hatred towards the men it's supposed to be serving will stop at anything to throw them into a perpetual meat grinder for the sake of maintaining power forever? Really? We keep invoking Orwell when it comes to this shit, but let's not forget that was an intrinsic characteristic of the Big Brother government that Orwell illustrated. The war was never intended to be won. It was intended to last forever. We had a week or two of celebration and optimism after Trump's victory, and even I joined in myself. I kept the black pills at bay for the sake of team morality. But as I've always said, white pills are a way for the regime to get us to let our guard down. White pills are the tipple of choice for those who would absent-mindedly open the gates for the barbarians. So yeah, it's been a fun couple of weeks, folks, mining all this salt as we gleefully own the libs or whatever, but pride comes before a fall. Get back on the ball, folks. Pay attention. These evil scumbags aren't just going to go peacefully into the night. They have designs on 1,000 years of darkness. Do you think they don't? Do you think they're not that bad after all? Do you think you do hate them enough? Give me a break. Pull the other one. Get with the program. You know what the program is. We have not won this war. We have not even begun to fight it. This is the war we should be fighting, not some bullshit distraction in Eastern Europe. So, yeah, knives out. Stand your ground, folks. Never, ever turn your back on the enemy within. Public service announcement concludes.
Hannah, did you want to say anything?
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at this, and so one of the things that the left does periodically when they think they're going to lose an election, or when they think they're going to win an election when someone right-wing is in office, they accuse the president of intending to stay in office by declaring martial law to keep the other side out. And then as soon as they make this declaration, there's like 1,000 articles that gets published about how the president cannot do that. There's no procedure in place for the president to do that. And if the president did do that, there's a bunch of laws in place that actually would stop him from doing it. That he'd be going up against Congress. He'd be in violation of the systems we have in place in order to maintain checks and balances. And even though the phrase checks and balances is not in the Constitution, the intention is. And so therefore that would result in the president simply getting impeached, and Congress would ignore him, and the military would ignore him, and nobody would be forced to live under martial law. And that's like every Republican candidate since Reagan. I've at least seen that happen in one news outlet, with another news outlet responding, "Oh, that's not possible. You guys are fear-mongering over nothing." Right? But why would they fearmonger if they didn't have an idea in mind as to how it could be done? So, of course, you kind of have to watch what your officials are doing. And if the situation becomes such that they actually try mechanical means within the legal system to overturn the election, they need to be held to their own standard. This was a legitimately elected president. This is a legitimate changing of horses. We are not midstream. And actually, Biden shouldn't have done what he did. So if the changeover does happen smoothly and everything goes as planned and we end up with President Trump in office after January 6th, everyone involved in carrying out Joe Biden's order needs to be investigated. Because they all knew that they were committing an act of war against Russia specifically during a changeover between a lame duck president and an incoming president. Like, that strikes me as not just hinky. It's actually worse than everything the Democrats have said about January 6th. So I hope they're preserving their papers, because if I'm thinking that way, I can't imagine that Trump is any less upset about it. I can't imagine that he's just going to sit on that and say, oh, it was no big deal. Yeah, the president gave an order. The president that everybody knows is too senile to continue in office and step down because he's not healthy enough to be president anymore, as an outgoing president, as a lame duck president, gave an order of aggression. Of course you would follow it, right? No. That should have been questioned all the way down the chain. Every single person involved should have questioned that. Every single person involved should have challenged that and said, why are we not just leaving this up to the next administration? Why do we have to do this right now? Because it's a very valid question. And anybody that did not ask it did not have the best interests of the country in mind.
Yeah, apparently the Republican leaders are calling for Biden's immediate removal under the 25th Amendment in response to this insane bombing of Russia. They're calling it unconstitutional act of war. I don't know. But yeah, it does seem like it's a calculated move, potentially. I'm guessing, because I know, this is what I know about Trump. I don't pretend to know the guy, but what I do know is that the guy does not stop working. When he was campaigning, he did so non-stop. Rallies, phone calls, contacts. The moment the election was over, he was on the phone with world leaders, and they were calling him up, and they were making videos, and he was making moves right away. So my guess is that he is on the phone with Putin like now, and essentially like trying to work something out, which Biden is not doing, because he has refused to speak with him, sit down with him, whatever. In fact, when Tucker Carlson went to go sit with him, the whole apparatus was pointed at him. Like, whatever, both sides. I hate to say it, but essentially the cathedral, which is just one side, let's be real. And they all came after him. So they didn't want to talk to him, but Trump will. And I think that says a lot. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think anyone wants to go to war. I think that it is a good way to grasp at power and definitely make some money. We will see. So anyway, I look forward to seeing your thoughts on that in the comments. We are going to go to the last story. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chows or anything, because for some reason they're not showing up in my social stream. Okay, no, nothing yet. All right, so let us go to the next one. BlueSky, you guys heard of it? It's the new thing. If you can't stand Twitter because it's too fascist, too biased, or just allows people of all sides to have opinions, then you can escape to the safe space known as BlueSky. Blue skies. That's
Wasn't there a horror movie with that name or something?
I have no idea. Vanilla Sky? That was like the Tom Cruise thing, but I never saw it. Okay, anyway. So many users, commie users, who are dissatisfied with X, formerly known as Twitter, are migrating to BlueSky, a decentralized social media platform that has gained significant traction following the U.S. presidential election. BlueSky has seen a surge in its user base, now surpassing 20 million users, largely due to policy changes at X, including modifications to its block feature and the allowance for third-party AI training on user data. This shift is also driven by a desire for a platform with better moderation, like more censorship, privacy, and a community atmosphere reminiscent of the earlier, less contentious days. This is according to the BBC, by the way, so take it however you have to take it. Less contentious days of Twitter. Unlike X, BlueSky focuses on user control data through its decentralized infrastructure, promising not to train AI and user content, which appeals to many looking for a more privacy conscious social media experience. And just one other thing to add to that I think is really funny about BlueSky is that there is a Twitter account. I can't remember the name of it, but it tracks. There's an account on X that tracks actions or things going on BlueSky, and apparently, since a lot of leftists have gone to BlueSky, they've also seen a massive increase in reports. So people are making complaints on BlueSky about other users for problematic content, and there's like thousands a day on this platform. Plus, also a lot of the journalists and stuff that have supposedly left ended up coming back to Twitter as well, and now they're on both platforms because they can't actually walk away. But anyway, I just I thought I would end on something a little bit lighter. So what do you guys think about BlueSky?
All together now. Nah, 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 nah. Hey, hey, hey. Goodbye. Go ahead. Go somewhere else. Go where not as many people are talking, not as many things are allowed to be said, not as much of what you think is allowed to be said. Goodbye. Enjoy it.
Like, look, let's be real. These people were shocked at the results of the election, and obviously the reason is because they didn't know what was actually being talked about on the ground, what people were saying, what the citizenry was all about, what people believed. They didn't know any of that because they were in a bubble, and X was probably the best way for them to actually get a handle on what was going on, and they're leaving X for something even more, I don't know, like filtered.
Here's the thing, all right? When we were all irate about how censored X was when it was Twitter, and how throttled people were, and how throttled people are on YouTube, how throttled people are on Facebook, how throttled people are on Reddit, all of that, right? What did they tell us? Go make your own platforms. And then they worked really hard to shut them down when we did. When people within our movement came along and said, yep, new platform, here we go. And every single one of those platforms has had to fight false allegations. Every single one of those platforms has had to fight legal attacks. There's been efforts at taking them down by boycotting their advertisers. Every single one of them. As far as BlueSky is concerned, let them have the people that want to put themselves in a bubble. I don't care. I think that they should take their own advice. It's the same advice we give when they come along and join into a hobby space, games, comics, horror novels, heavy metal music, anything that is primarily enjoyed, like a male interest hobby space, where yes, there are women there. Yes, women get involved. Yes, women enjoy it, but not in anywhere near the same numbers as men, right? And they come into those hobby spaces and insist on a bunch of woke nonsense being inserted into it to make woke ideologues comfortable in the name of supporting women and minorities that are already there. We tell them, make your own. If you want it to be like that, don't tell us we have to change ours. Make your own. They made their own. Good for them. Let them enjoy it. I know that they're making it, I'm going to take my ball and go home. We don't give a fuck about your ball. Take it. It wasn't something we were interested in anyway.
Take your ovary home, not your ball.
Yeah. There we go.
I feel like I should do a cover of Mr. BlueSky by ELO as soon as possible.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know that song, like transatlantically, Mr. BlueSky, please tell us why you had to hide away from soul. I guess not. It almost became
that hideaway bit makes it perfect.
It almost became the theme tune to The American Office. Not a lot of people know that, but they had to go somewhere else because they couldn't clear it legally. And that's rather emblematic of the problem. There have been many alternatives to Twitter. presented to us over the years, but they all failed, or at least stumbled at the first hurdle, be they right-leaning or left-leaning. Gab is great, but they're still fairly obscure, largely because they refuse to host anything resembling pornography, which, is understandable. Mastodon failed because they're an unregulated Japanese site that allows anything and everything up to and including CP. So all these leftists were sat there trying to express their political views on Mastodon, surrounded by videos of children getting fucked to death in fire and brimstone. Whoops! I guess we should stop doing this, guys. Should we stop doing this? We're here trying to defend the excesses of feminist policies, and right below our posts, there's a bunch of children getting, raped. Should we? Yeah, I guess we'll abandon Mastodon and go back to Twitter. This is not good optics. It is exactly what we asked for, kind of, but we don't want people to know that, so we should just, bye-bye. Will anyone be surprised when the same thing happens to BlueSky? When a site is suddenly mass-populated by leftists, it becomes a haven for CP. When a site is mass-populated by rightists, it becomes a haven for anything but CP. It's the weirdest thing. And I'm not saying that leftists are a bunch of child rapists, but, well, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. You are insidious predators that exploit children because you don't care how much damage you do to the general population, as long as your political agenda is enacted as swiftly as possible. This is what wood chippers are for. I know it looks like wood chippers are for chipping wood, but to be honest, we are underutilizing them. One good thing that could come from social media is we could use it to locate and isolate people who sexually exploit children, and thereby we can fast track them into the nearest wood chipper. But again, I must complain about the UK and its increasingly Stalinist government, which is using Twitter as a means to track down anyone who complains about excessive immigration, or more recently, those who oppose this new inheritance tax against farmers and against everyone, and throws them into the fucking wood chipper of the prison system. So yeah, if you live in a Stalinist state like the UK, you probably should go to BlueSky and talk about how much you want to mutilate children's genitals and fuck their eviscerated holes to death. You will not be arrested or even investigated. But if you want to complain about the government and its ruthless agenda to undermine and demoralize the British people, do not do it on Twitter, or they will send a squad of police officers to your house to bugger you to death in prison. You should probably go to Gab. It's not about what you say. It's about how many communist traitors you can hear saying it. Better yet, flee the fucking UK. It's a sinking ship. Join the American resistance. And hopefully at some point help us to liberate the UK from the Islamo-communist regime that is occupying it. Sorry, I keep going on tangents every time I try to talk about these stories, but bollocks to it. I have an agenda, and I'm tired of pretending I don't. I've seen what the USA has, and I want it for myself. I will even pray to Jesus if that's what it takes. My Lord Jesus, help me raise this hellscape to the ground with the holy BFG 9000. and the Lord said, "No, John, you are the demons." And then John was a zombie.
Oh, Jesus is all right with me. Well, do you want to say anything about the farmers? Because I mean, we could talk about the farmers. We got like 15 minutes.
We'll save it for the after show.
Yeah, we can talk about
everyone.
it.
So
yeah, I think it's going to come up in the Patreon show. Yeah, that's a good idea. I suspect. All right. Well, anyway, hopefully, you know that BlueSky is also like Jack Dorsey's new platform, right? So that's his arc so far. He goes, makes Twitter, leaves Twitter, makes BlueSky in response to X. So Richard Bier gave us a super chow for $5, and he says, "Does joining Blue Sky come with a complimentary block from Steve Shives?" Sperm, using sperm. Steve Shives did make a video after it just showed up on my feed randomly. I didn't even know the guy was still a thing, but he made a video about the election and was like, well, let's just say he didn't learn anything. But anyway, so we're gonna end the show here, which is nice. It's a little bit early, and we're gonna look at this article from The Guardian called "How to Survive the Broligarchy: 20 Lessons for the Post-Truth World." I love listicles. I hope you guys like listicles because we're doing a listicle, or at least that's what I think it's gonna be. I mean, maybe it won't be. Sometimes these people set something up and they don't actually fulfill. So maybe we'll be disappointed. Maybe we'll just talk about the farmers. But you won't know that unless you join us. So go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe and jump into the Discord server. Enjoy the additional content. Hopefully we see you guys there, and I look forward to it. So with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about everything that we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Once again, happy International Men's Day to all the men and the people who love them out there. Remember, none of what we do here is possible without men or without you. So thank you once again so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will see you next Tuesday. Happy International Men's Day once again.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.